The dog didn't bark. He froze, staring at a single spot on the cabin floor, like he'd just uncovered something no one was meant to find. Wood cracked under Jack's boot as he dropped to one knee, breath tight, fingers brushing the same board Mako had been clawing for hours. The air felt wrong, too still. Then a faint metallic echo came from beneath the floor, like something shifting far below. Mako let out a low, urgent whine and backed away. "What do you think is down there?" The truck had been dead for 2 days. Jack Callahan sat behind the wheel anyway, hands resting lightly on the cracked steering wheel, as if the engine might change its mind if he didn't give up on it. The morning air in Durango cut through the seams of the cab, thin and sharp, carrying the smell of cold metal and pine from somewhere beyond the highway. He had parked where he always did, edge of the lot, back toward a broken fence, front angled toward the only exit. Wide line of sight. No blind corners. Habit. Not thought. A car door slammed somewhere across the lot. Jack's body moved before his mind caught up. His hand dropped under the seat, fingers closing around cold steel. His shoulders tightened. Breath paused halfway in. Silence followed. Not danger. Just a woman loading groceries into her trunk, muttering to herself. Jack exhaled slowly, but the tension didn't leave all at once. It never did. Beside him, Mako lifted his head. The German shepherd didn't bark, didn't whine, just watched. Ears forward, eyes steady, waiting. "Easy," Jack murmured, voice low, like he was speaking to someone on a night watch. No contact. Mako's gaze shifted once more toward the woman, then back to Jack. After a moment, he lowered his head again, but not all the way, never all the way. Jack released the knife and let it slide back under the seat. His hand lingered there a second longer than it needed to. The truck didn't start when he turned the key again. It hadn't the last 12 times either. The engine clicked once, dry and hollow, like something inside had already made its final decision. He didn't curse, didn't hit the wheel, just let the key fall back. Outside, the town was waking up. Delivery trucks rolled past on the highway. A man in a reflective vest dragged a hose across the pavement. Life moved in straight lines here, predictable, loud in the wrong ways. Jack preferred the quiet between sounds. He reached over and grabbed the dented thermos from the passenger seat, unscrewed the cap, and took a sip. Cold. Bitter. It had been coffee once. Mako shifted closer, pressing against his leg. Jack glanced down. The dog's ribs weren't showing anymore. Not like the first week he'd found him behind that abandoned gas station outside Farmington. But there was still a lean sharpness to him, built for movement, for work, for staying. "You picked the wrong guy," Jack said quietly. Mako didn't react to the words, just stayed where he was, steady weight against Jack's thigh. Jack leaned back in the seat, eyes drifting toward the horizon beyond the lot. Low mountains in the distance, dusted with the first hint of snow. Wind pushed through them in slow waves, invisible but felt. For a second, the sound shifted. The wind through the broken fence turned into something else, low, rhythmic, growing louder. Not wind. Rotors. Jack's fingers tightened around the thermos. The mountains disappeared, replaced by sand. Heat. The metallic taste at the back of his throat. Someone shouting over the noise. Coordinates. Fast. LZ's not clear. Jack blinked hard. The parking lot snapped back into place. The hose scraped against concrete again. A truck horn blared somewhere too close. His chest rose, fell. Once. Twice. Mako nudged his hand. Not hard. Just enough. Jack looked down at him, really looked this time. Amber eyes. Focused. Present. "Yeah," Jack said under his breath. "I'm here." He set the thermos aside and opened the truck door. Cold air rushed in, sharper now, carrying the scent of coming weather. Mako jumped down first, landing light, scanning the perimeter in a slow arc before stepping away from the truck. Not wandering, just checking. Jack followed, boots hitting gravel. He stretched his back, joints stiff from another night half sleeping upright. Every movement deliberate, efficient. He walked the length of the fence line, counting steps without realizing he was doing it, not looking for anything specific, just making sure nothing had changed. Nothing ever did. That was the problem. When he got back, Mako was waiting by the truck, sitting now, head tilted slightly, as if listening to something Jack couldn't hear. "What is it?" Jack asked. The dog didn't move, just kept looking. A moment passed. Then Mako stood, walked to the far side of the truck, and sniffed along the rear tire. Slow, methodical. Jack watched him, a faint crease forming between his brows. "Find something?" Mako paused, then looked back at him. Not alarmed, just aware. Jack crossed over, crouched beside him. The gravel was cold through his jeans. He followed the line of Mako's nose, scanning the ground. Tire marks, old oil stain. Nothing unusual. Still, he stayed there a second longer. Trust the dog. Always. "Probably nothing," he said, though he didn't quite believe it. Mako stayed still until Jack stood again. Only then did he move, falling into place at Jack's side. They stood there together for a while, man and dog, facing the empty stretch of road beyond the lot. No plan, no destination, just distance behind them and not much ahead. Jack ran a hand over the back of Mako's neck, fingers brushing through thick fur. The dog leaned into it, just slightly. "You and me," Jack said. It wasn't a promise. It was just the truth. The wind picked up again, colder this time. Somewhere far off, a storm was building. Jack didn't know it yet. But the next thing that found him wouldn't come with noise or warning. It would come quiet. Folded in an envelope, with a name he hadn't heard in years. It showed up just after noon. Jack noticed it before he picked it up. The way it sat on the cracked dashboard, too clean, too out of place among the dust and old receipts. No stamp from the local post. No crease from being shoved through a mailbox slot. Just his name. Printed. Precise. Jack Callahan. He didn't touch it right away. Instead, he stood outside the truck, one hand resting on the doorframe, eyes scanning the lot in slow, measured passes. Same angles, same exits, same blind spots. Nothing new. Mako stood a few feet ahead, body still, ears angled forward, not tense but alert, watching. "Didn't see anyone drop it off," Jack said quietly. Mako didn't move. Jack reached in and picked up the envelope between two fingers, turning it over. Heavy stock, not cheap. Return address printed in the corner. Caldwell and Pierce, attorneys at law, Cheyenne, Wyoming. His jaw tightened just slightly. Wyoming. He slid a thumb under the seal but paused before opening it. His eyes flicked once more across the lot, instinct checking for patterns that didn't belong. Still nothing. He opened it. Inside was a single sheet. Thick paper. Formal. He read it once, fast. Then again, slower. By the third time, the words didn't change, but something in his posture did. "Estate of Robert Callahan," he muttered under his breath. The name sat wrong. Not unfamiliar. Just buried. Jack leaned back against the truck, paper held loosely in his hand as if it might disappear if he gripped it too tight. Robert Callahan, his uncle. Last time he'd seen him. Jack's mind didn't give him a clean answer. Just fragments. A man standing off to the side at a funeral. Same last name. Same quiet eyes. Never stayed long. Never said much. Then gone. Like he'd never been part of the family at all. Jack's gaze dropped back to the letter. You have been named the sole beneficiary. He let out a short breath that wasn't quite a laugh. Soul, he repeated. Mako shifted closer, nudging Jack's elbow gently. Jack didn't look at him yet. He kept reading. A cabin. Wind River Range. 40 acres of land. No outstanding debt. Full transfer upon signature. There was a number at the bottom. Contact. Instructions. It felt wrong. Not the words, the timing. Jack folded the letter once, then again, precise edges lining up clean. He slid it back into the envelope and tapped it lightly against his palm. Mako's eyes were on him now. What do you think? Jack asked. The dog tilted his head slightly, then glanced toward the road. Not the highway, the smaller access road that ran behind the lot. Jack followed the look. Empty. Still. But something about the direction stayed with him. He tucked the envelope into his jacket. Yeah, he said quietly. I don't like it either. The phone rang 10 minutes later. Jack didn't answer immediately. He let it ring once, twice, 3 times. He watched the screen. Unknown number. Mako stood up, not barking, just standing. Jack answered on the 4th ring. Callahan. A pause. Then a voice, smooth and practiced. Jack. Finally. Jack didn't speak. The voice continued, a hint of a smile woven into it. This is Daniel, your cousin. It's been a while. Jack's eyes didn't move from the road. Not that long, he said. Another pause. Slight shift in tone. Well, long enough, I guess. Listen, we heard you got the letter. Jack's grip on the phone tightened a fraction. We. My brother's here too. We've been trying to track you down since the estate got processed. You move around a lot. Jack didn't respond. The voice filled the silence. Look, we just want to help. That place in Wyoming? It's not exactly livable. You don't want to deal with that kind of property. Taxes, maintenance, all that. Jack's gaze flicked toward Mako. The dog was watching the road again. Still, listening. We can take it off your hands, Daniel continued. Handle everything. Sell it. Split it clean. You walk away with cash, no headache. Jack leaned his head back against the truck, eyes half closed, but not relaxed. Calculating. Split, he repeated. Of course, family, right? The word hung there. Jack opened his eyes. When did family start calling me back? He asked. Silence. Then a soft exhale on the other end. Come on, Jack. No need to make this difficult. Jack looked down at the envelope in his jacket pocket, then back at the empty road. Send me the address, he said. A beat. What? The cabin, Jack said. Send me the address. Daniel hesitated. That's not really necessary. We can handle... Send it, Jack repeated, voice flat. Another pause. Longer this time. All right, Daniel said finally. But you're making this harder than it needs to be. The call ended. Jack lowered the phone slowly. A message came through seconds later. Coordinates. Not just an address, exact coordinates. Jack stared at the numbers. Then he smiled. Not wide, not warm, just enough. They didn't think I'd recognize that, he murmured. Mako stepped closer. Jack scratched behind the dog's ear, fingers steady now. Grid coordinates, he said, not a mailing address. Mako leaned into the touch. Jack looked back at the road. Means they don't want anyone else finding it. The wind shifted again, colder than before. Jack folded the phone shut and slipped it into his pocket. Then he walked around to the driver's side, opened the door, and sat down behind the wheel. The engine didn't start. He didn't try again. Instead, he reached over, grabbed his pack, and started moving things, sorting, packing, deciding. Mako watched every movement. No wasted motion, no hesitation. Jack paused once, hand resting on the envelope. Then he slid it deeper into the jacket. Looks like we're moving, he said. Mako's ears lifted. Jack glanced at him. North. The dog didn't bark, didn't wag his tail, just stood there, ready, same as always. Jack looked out through the cracked windshield one last time at the town that had barely noticed him. Then he turned the key again. This time, the engine caught. Rough, uneven, but alive. Jack didn't question it. He just shifted into gear and drove. The truck rattled like it might come apart at any second, but it held. Jack kept both hands steady on the wheel, eyes forward, posture slightly leaned in. Not relaxed, not rigid, just ready. The road out of Durango stretched ahead in long, empty lines, the early afternoon sun flattening everything into pale gold and shadow. He didn't take the main highway. At the first split, he turned off without signaling, tires crunching over loose gravel as he merged onto a narrower road that wound between low hills and scrub brush. Less traffic, fewer eyes. Mako stood with his front paws braced against the passenger seat, head lifted just enough to watch the road through the windshield. Every so often, his ears would twitch, catching something distant, something Jack couldn't hear. Keep it that way, Jack muttered. The truck pushed north. Miles slipped by. The land changed slowly. Colorado's edges softened into long stretches of open ground, then lifted again into rising terrain. The air cooled as elevation climbed. Pine replaced dry brush. Shadows stretched longer across the road. Jack didn't turn on the radio. Didn't need the noise. He counted things instead. Distance between mile markers. Time between passing vehicles. The rhythm of the engine when it held steady, when it didn't. At a gas station outside Monticello, Utah, he pulled in just long enough to fill the tank. He chose the pump farthest from the building, back turned to the open space, eyes angled toward the glass doors. A man stepped out as Jack started pumping, mid-40s, work boots, ball cap pulled low. Jack didn't stare, just noted. The man glanced once at the truck, then at Mako, then looked away. No second glance. Jack finished fueling. Inside, the fluorescent lights flickered faintly. It hit him wrong, too close to the kind of stutter that used to come before everything went loud. For a second, the hum of the lights stretched too long, too sharp. Jack blinked. The counter came back into focus. A teenage clerk rang him up without looking up, voice flat, uninterested. Pump 4. Jack paid cash. Outside, the air felt cleaner. He didn't linger. Back on the road, the sky started to shift as the afternoon wore on. Clouds gathered in slow layers, thickening over the distant ridges, the kind of weather that could turn fast. Mako settled into the seat this time, but he didn't sleep. His head stayed up, eyes tracking movement, tree lines, passing shadows, anything that broke the pattern. Jack drove until the light began to fade. He didn't push into the dark without a reason. Just before dusk, he turned off onto a dirt road that cut toward a line of trees, not visible from the main route, slight elevation advantage, limited approach angles. Good enough. He parked facing outward, engine off. Silence rolled in. Jack sat there for a moment, listening. Wind through branches, distant birds. Nothing mechanical, nothing close. Mako jumped down first, circling once, twice, then stopping near the edge of the clearing. His body angled toward the tree line, nose lifted. Jack stepped out, stretching his back again, scanning the perimeter the same way he always did, slow, methodical, not missing anything obvious. He grabbed a small can from the back, poured water into a metal bowl. Mako drank, but not all of it. He stopped halfway, ears twitching again. Jack noticed. Something out there, he asked quietly. Mako didn't bark. He just stood there, watching. Jack followed his line of sight into the trees. Nothing moved. But that didn't mean empty. He left the rest of the water and walked back to the truck, pulling a worn blanket from behind the seat. Night would drop the temperature fast out here. He didn't light a fire. Didn't need the signal. Inside the cab, he leaned back again, one hand resting loosely near the knife under the seat, the other on the envelope in his jacket. He hadn't looked at it again since leaving town. Didn't need to. The coordinates were already burned into his mind. Wind River Range. Remote. Deliberate. His thumb tapped once against the paper through the fabric. Why me? He said under his breath. Mako jumped up into the passenger seat, turning once before settling down, but not fully. His body stayed angled toward the windshield, watching even as he rested. Jack closed his eyes. Sleep didn't come easy. It never did. At some point in the night, the wind picked up hard enough to shake the truck slightly. The sound scraped along the metal, low and uneven. For a second, it twisted, changed shape. Rotor wash. Voices under it. Move! Move! Jack's eyes snapped open. His hand was already on the knife. Breath tight, chest locked. Darkness filled the cab. No lights, no shouting, no dust. Just wind. Mako was already up, standing across the seat, nose inches from Jack's shoulder. Not panicked, not aggressive, just there. Jack forced a slow breath in, then another. The tension eased piece by piece. I'm good, he said quietly. Mako didn't move until Jack's hand came up and rested against his neck. Only then did the dog settle again. Morning came gray and cold. Jack started the truck without hesitation this time. The engine coughed once, then held steady. He didn't question it, didn't celebrate it, just drove. North. The road climbed higher now. Snow dusted the edges of the mountains in the distance. The air thinned, sharpened. Somewhere beyond those ridges, there was a cabin. A man he barely knew had left it to him, and two people who suddenly cared a lot more than they should. Jack adjusted his grip on the wheel. Mako's ears lifted again. Both of them felt it now. Not danger, not yet, but something waiting. And neither of them turned back. The road narrowed until it wasn't really a road anymore. Just two tracks cutting through frost-hardened dirt, winding up into the Wind River Range like something that didn't want to be found. The truck climbed slowly, engine working harder now, the sound deeper, strained but steady. Jack eased off the gas at every blind turn. Didn't rush it. Didn't need to. Up here, speed didn't give you an advantage. It just took options away. Mako had stopped shifting around hours ago. Now he stood still in the passenger seat, body angled forward, nose twitching faintly as the air changed. Pine. Cold rock. Snow somewhere close. Jack rolled the window down an inch. Let the outside in. No engines. No distant traffic. No voices. Just wind. Good place to disappear, he said quietly. Mako didn't look at him. His focus was ahead. They reached the final stretch just before sunset. The trees opened without warning. And there it was. The cabin. Jack didn't stop right away. He drove past it once, slow, windows dark, no smoke, no movement, no vehicle tracks fresh enough to matter. He kept going another 50 yards before turning the truck around, parking at an angle where he could see both the structure and the approach path behind him. Engine off. Silence came down hard. Jack sat there a moment, eyes moving across the cabin in measured sweeps. 2 stories. Log construction. Roof pitched steep, metal, weathered but intact. Stone chimney. Solid. Front porch wide enough for cover. Not abandoned. Maintained. Or at least built to last. That's not a shack, he said under his breath. Mako was already moving. The moment the door opened, he dropped to the ground, circling wide instead of heading straight in. Nose low, tail level, not relaxed, not aggressive, working. Jack stepped out slower, didn't follow the same path. He moved along the edge of the clearing, boots silent against packed dirt, giving the structure distance while his eyes traced lines, windows, corners, roofline, clear angles, no broken glass, no forced entry. The place looked untouched, but not forgotten. He stopped at the tree line opposite the cabin and crouched slightly, watching, waiting. Mako paused near the porch steps, then turned his head, not toward the cabin, toward the woods. Jack caught it immediately. Where? He asked softly. Mako didn't bark, just held the direction. Jack's gaze followed. Nothing moved, but the feeling stayed. He shifted position, stepping closer to the cabin now, but keeping his angle open to both threats, the structure and the tree line. Old habits. Always 2 problems. Always assume both are real. He climbed the porch slowly. The boards didn't creak much, solid underfoot. The front door stood closed, no visible lock damage, no signs of someone trying to get in. Jack reached for the handle, paused, listened. Nothing inside, no shifting air, no movement. He opened it. The door swung inward without resistance. Inside smelled like dry wood and something faint. Ash, maybe. Old fire. Jack didn't step in right away. He stood in the doorway, eyes adjusting, scanning. Main room, table, chairs, shelves, everything in place. 2 in place. Mako stepped past him without hesitation, but he didn't explore like a dog in a new place. He moved slow, deliberate, nose brushing along the edges of furniture, the base of walls, tracking. Jack entered behind him, floorboards solid, no dust clouds, no signs of decay. He moved through the space like he was clearing a structure, each step placed with intent. Corners first, lines of sight, exit points, kitchen area clean, back room, tools hung on the wall, organized, not random, not chaotic. Every tool had a place. Jack's eyes lingered there a second longer, then moved on. Upstairs, 2 rooms, 1 bed made, blankets folded, no personal clutter, like someone had packed up their life without leaving. Jack came back down slowly. Mako was standing in the center of the main room now, not moving. Jack watched him. "What is it?" he asked. Mako didn't respond, didn't turn, just stood there. Jack stepped closer. The room felt off. He couldn't place it at first. Then he did, space. He turned slowly, eyes measuring distances, wall to wall, door to window, then back again. Something didn't add up. He walked to one side, counting steps, turned, counted again, frowned. Doesn't match, he murmured. Mako shifted slightly, claws scraping faintly against the wood. Then he lowered his head and pressed his nose to the floor. Same spot. He scraped once, paused, scraped again. Not random, not playful, deliberate. Jack's pulse slowed. Not faster, slower, like it used to before something important. Show me, he said quietly. Mako stepped back half a pace but didn't leave the spot. Jack crouched, running his hand along the floorboards. Smooth, but one line, just barely visible. Different grain, different cut. His fingers pressed down, solid, but not the same. Jack leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing. Then he stood, scanning the room again. Door, windows, walls. No obvious mechanism, which meant hidden. He looked down at Mako. The dog was watching him now, waiting. Jack nodded once. Yeah, he said. We're not alone in this place. Outside, the wind picked up again. But inside the cabin, something felt sealed. Like it had been waiting longer than either of them understood. Jack didn't move right away. He stayed crouched, hand resting lightly on the floorboards, eyes tracing that faint seam again. It was subtle. Too clean to be damage. Too straight to be natural. Built. Not hidden in a hurry. Designed to disappear. Behind him, the cabin held its silence. No creaks. No settling wood. Just stillness thick enough to press against the ears. Mako shifted first. A low sound rolled from his chest. Not a bark, not quite a growl. Something in between. A warning without panic. Jack turned his head slightly. The dog wasn't looking at the floor anymore. He was facing the front door. Body angled. Weight forward. Listening. Jack's gaze followed. Nothing moved. But the wind outside had changed direction, sliding along the cabin walls with a different pitch. It slipped through the cracks between logs, thin and uneven, like a distant blade slicing air. For a moment, it twisted, changed. The sound sharpened. Rotor blades. Jack's body reacted instantly. He was on his feet before the thought finished forming, one step back, one hand already reaching under his jacket. Down! He snapped. Mako dropped flat without hesitation. Jack's eyes locked on the door, breath tight, shoulders set. The sound surged, then broke. Wind again, just wind. The room came back into place, piece by piece. Wood, table, light through the window. No dust, no movement, no threat. Jack didn't lower his hand right away. He stood there, still as a post, counting breaths. 1, 2, 3. The tension bled out slowly, like pressure releasing from a sealed valve. Clear, he said under his breath. Mako lifted his head, watching him carefully. Jack exhaled once, long and controlled, then ran a hand over his face. Yeah, he murmured. Still here. Mako rose, but he didn't relax. He stayed between Jack and the door, head low, ears tracking every shift in sound outside. Jack looked down at the floor again. The seam hadn't moved. Whatever was under there, it wasn't reacting. Which meant one of two things. Either it was empty, or it didn't need to react. Jack stood slowly. His eyes moved around the room, searching now with more intent. Not just noticing, but analyzing. There had to be a way in. No one builds something like that and leaves it to chance. He stepped back, widening his view. Walls, furniture, fireplace. The stone chimney caught his attention this time. Too central, Too heavy. He moved toward it, boots quiet against the wood, and ran his fingers along the edge where stone met floor. Solid. Clean. No give. But close. The seam in the floor sat just off-center from it. Deliberate. Mako followed, limping slightly now. Jack noticed immediately. "Hold up," he said, dropping to one knee. He reached for the dog's front leg gently, turning it just enough to see. A thin cut ran along the pad. Fresh. Clean slice. Probably from a sharp edge under the floor earlier. Not deep, but bleeding. "Damn," Jack muttered softly. Mako didn't pull away. Didn't whine. Just watched him. Jack tore a strip from the inside of his sleeve, wrapped it tight, but not too tight. Fingers steady, practiced. The kind of work done fast, under worse conditions. "Stay off it for a minute," he said. Mako blinked once. Didn't argue. Jack stood again, slower this time. The cabin felt different now. Not just quiet. Waiting. He stepped back to the center of the room, looked down. Mako shifted again, moving back to the same spot on the floor. Same exact spot. And this time, he didn't just scratch. He dug. Hard. Claws hit wood with a sharp, rhythmic scrape. Once. Twice. Again. Not random. Not playful. Focused. Jack's pulse dropped again. Steadying. Sharpening. This wasn't instinct. This was intent. "Easy," Jack said, stepping closer. Mako stopped immediately, backing off just enough to give space, but his eyes never left the spot. Jack crouched, pressed his palm flat against the wood. Nothing. He leaned in, ear close to the surface. For a second, there was only silence. Then a faint shift. Not sound. Pressure. Like air settling in a space below. Jack sat back slowly, eyes narrowing. "All right," he murmured. His hand slid along the edge again until his fingers found it. A barely raised lip. Metal. Not wood. His thumb pressed harder. It didn't move. Locked. Jack stood again, scanning the room once more. Think. Not force. Whoever built this didn't leave it simple. There would be a release, hidden in plain sight. His eyes drifted back to the chimney, to the carved edge of the wooden mantel above it. Details he hadn't studied yet. Small shapes carved into the wood. Birds, leaves, patterns repeated. One of them different, slightly worn, touched more than the others. Jack stepped toward it slowly. Mako watched. The wind outside dropped suddenly. Silence pressed in. Jack raised his hand, paused just before touching the carving. Something in his chest tightened. Not fear. Recognition. Like standing on the edge of something that couldn't be undone. He glanced once at Mako. The dog held his gaze. Steady. Ready. Jack pressed the carving. A soft click echoed through the cabin. Behind him, wood shifted. Low. Heavy. Not loud, but final. Jack turned. The seam in the floor had opened, just enough to reveal darkness beneath. Cold air spilled upward, carrying a scent that didn't belong to the cabin. Not decay, not earth. Something older. Still, Mako stepped forward, despite the bandaged paw. Jack's hand dropped to his shoulder, stopping him. "Not yet," he said quietly. The opening waited. Silent. Deep. And whatever was down there had just been found. Jack didn't move. The opening in the floor wasn't wide. Not yet. Just a narrow gap where wood had separated cleanly, revealing a black line that swallowed light instead of reflecting it. Cold air pushed upward in a slow, steady breath. Not damp, not stale, preserved. Jack crouched again, one hand braced against the floor, the other hovering just above the edge of the opening. He didn't touch it immediately. Instead, he listened. Nothing. No shifting gravel. No distant echo, no mechanical hum, no life. But that didn't mean empty. Mako took a step forward. The bandaged paw touched the wood, then hesitated at the edge of the opening. His nose lowered, drawing in the air from below in short, controlled breaths. Then he stiffened. Not fear. Recognition. Jack saw it in the way the dog's ears angled. Not forward, not back, but slightly outward. Processing. "What is it?" Jack asked quietly. Mako didn't answer. He just stayed there, locked onto the darkness. Jack reached out and grabbed his collar, holding him back. "Not yet," he repeated. His eyes scanned the room again, slower this time. Now that the entrance was open, the cabin felt different. The silence had weight to it, like something had shifted the moment the mechanism clicked. Jack stood and moved to the kitchen area. Drawers opened smoothly. Inside, tools. Old, but maintained. Flashlight. He picked it up, thumb pressing the switch. A beam cut through the dim room, sharp and focused. Good batteries. Of course. He turned back to the opening. Mako hadn't moved. Jack stepped beside him, lowering the beam toward the gap. Light slid down into the darkness and stopped. Not because it hit the bottom, because the angle was wrong. Stairs, narrow, descending at a steep angle, carved into something darker than the cabin's wood. Concrete. Jack adjusted the beam, angling it deeper. The steps went down farther than he expected. 12 feet, maybe more. Out of sight. His grip on the flashlight tightened slightly. "Who builds this?" he muttered. Mako shifted again, weight pressing forward despite the injury. Jack's hand tightened on his collar. "Stay." The dog froze instantly. Training, not basic obedience. Something deeper. Jack released him slowly and reached for the edge of the floor panel. It was heavier than it looked, balanced but solid. Whoever built it had expected it to last. He pulled it wider. The opening expanded with a low, grinding sound of hidden metal moving against metal. The air from below grew colder, cleaner, almost filtered. Jack stepped to the edge, looked down. The flashlight beam followed, tracing each step, each edge. No debris, no collapse, no dust cloud from the movement. Untouched. For a long time, Jack exhaled slowly. "All right," he said under his breath. His foot hovered over the first step, then stopped. He pulled it back. "Think. Not rush." He turned, scanning the cabin again. Windows, door, angles. If someone came up the trail now, they'd see the truck, the open door, no cover. Jack moved fast but quiet. He crossed to the door, stepped outside, and scanned the tree line again. Same as before. Empty. But still. He grabbed the door and pulled it closed. Not locked, just shut. Reduced visibility. Back inside, the light dimmed slightly. He returned to the opening. Mako stood beside him now, silent. Watching. Waiting. Jack adjusted his grip on the flashlight. Then he stepped down. First step, solid. Second, third, each one placed carefully. Weight tested before committing. His breathing slowed automatically. Controlled. Like descending into a structure in the dark. At step 6, the air changed. Not temperature. Density. Thicker. Still. Jack paused. Listened again. Nothing. Behind him, Mako shifted, then followed, despite the injury, despite the command. Jack didn't stop him this time. "Stay close," he said quietly. The dog moved carefully, favoring the injured paw but keeping balance. At the bottom, the space opened. The flashlight beam spread outward and revealed walls, concrete, smooth, poured, not carved, reinforced. Jack stepped off the final stair. Boots met solid ground with a dull echo that didn't carry far. The room wasn't large, but it was precise. Shelving lined the walls, metal racks, wooden crates stacked in uniform rows, every edge straight, every gap measured. No clutter, no chaos. Organization, intent. Jack moved forward slowly, sweeping the light across the nearest crate. Numbers stenciled on the side. Dates. Decades old. He crouched, running his fingers along the surface. Dust. Thin, even. Undisturbed. Mako moved past him, nose working along the lower shelves. He stopped once, sniffing deeper at a corner, then moved on. No barking, no alarm, just awareness. Jack stood again. The beam shifted to the far side of the room. A desk, solid wood. Chair pulled back slightly, as if someone had stood up and never returned. On top, papers, stacks, neat, waiting. Jack didn't approach it yet. He stayed where he was, letting his eyes take it all in. This wasn't storage. Not just that. This was planned. Every inch of it. He turned slowly, light tracing the walls again. No signs of forced entry. No secondary exits. One way in. One way out. Defensible. Contained. Jack's jaw tightened. Not random, he said. Mako looked back at him. The dog's chest rose and fell steadily, but there was something in his eyes now, something sharper. Jack followed his gaze, toward the desk. The flashlight beam settled there again. Papers, records, answers. Jack took one step forward, then another. Behind him, the stairs disappeared into shadow. Above them, the cabin stood silent. Below, something had been waiting, and now they were inside it. Jack didn't reach for the papers. Not yet. He stood still in the center of the room, letting his eyes adjust fully to the space. The flashlight beam moved slowly, deliberately, not missing anything. Corners, seams, shadows behind crates. Nothing jumped out. No wires, no traps, no signs of disturbance. But the feeling didn't go away. This place wasn't abandoned. It was preserved. Mako moved ahead of him, slower now, favoring the injured paw but refusing to stop. His nose traced along the edge of a metal crate, then another, then paused at a shelf halfway down the wall. A soft whine slipped out of him. Jack turned instantly. "What is it?" Mako didn't back away. He leaned closer. Jack stepped in, lowering the light. The edge of the shelf caught it first. Clean metal, no rust. Then the floor beneath, a thin line of red, not fresh, but not old enough to ignore. Jack's jaw tightened. He crouched again, running 2 fingers lightly across it. Dry, flaked. Not from here. Not from long ago either. His eyes flicked to Mako's bandaged paw, then back to the line. "Not yours," he murmured. Mako let out a quiet breath, almost like agreement. Jack stood slowly, scanning again, but now sharper. Someone had been here. Maybe not recently, but not decades ago either. The room wasn't sealed forever, just hidden well enough that no one found it. Until now. He shifted his attention to the desk. Each step toward it felt measured, controlled. The chair sat slightly angled, like someone had stood up mid-task and never returned. Jack stopped just short of it. The flashlight beam rested on the top page, handwritten, clean, precise, not rushed. He reached out and picked it up. The paper felt thick, old, but preserved perfectly. Numbers filled the page, columns, dates, amounts. At first it didn't register, just patterns. Then, names, companies, familiar, too familiar. Jack's brow furrowed. He flipped to the next page. More of the same. Different dates, same format. He turned another, and another. The numbers changed, grew, expanded. What started as thousands moved into hundreds of thousands, then millions. Jack's breathing slowed again. Not panic. Focus. He leaned forward slightly, the beam tightening over the paper. Apple. Microsoft. Boeing. Lockheed. Entries stacked over decades. Purchases, sales, reinvestments, calculated, patient. Jack lowered the paper slightly, looked around the room again. Crates, shelves, everything numbered, everything logged. This wasn't just storage. This was a system, a lifetime of it. Behind him, Mako shifted again. A sharper sound this time. Jack turned fast. The dog had moved closer to the far side of the room, toward a stack of wooden crates. His body was angled sideways now, injured paw barely touching the ground. Guarding. Jack moved to him quickly. Easy, he said, dropping beside him. Mako didn't step away. He stood his ground, head low, eyes fixed on the crates. Jack followed his gaze. One of them slightly open. Not enough to see inside, but not sealed like the others. Jack reached out slowly, fingers gripping the edge. He paused, listened again. Nothing. He pulled. The lid shifted with a dry creak. The flashlight beam slid inside and caught canvas. Wrapped. Careful. Jack pulled the fabric back just enough and froze. Color. Deep, layered. Not random. Paint. An oil painting. Old. Detailed. Mountains. Light cutting across them in a way that didn't feel like a photograph, but something more. Something alive. Jack stared at it a second longer than he meant to, then gently set it back. His hand moved to the side of the crate. A number, matching the ledger. He stood again, slower now. Everything connected. Every crate. Every page. Every entry. His eyes drifted back to the desk, to the final stack. He walked toward it, picked up the top page. Different format. Summary. Totals. His thumb traced down the column. Paintings, sculptures, assets, stocks. Numbers lined up beside them. Then, at the bottom, a single line. Total estimated value. Jack's eyes stopped there. Didn't move. Didn't blink. The number sat on the page like it didn't belong to reality. $265 million. The room didn't change. Didn't react. But something inside him shifted. Not excitement. Not relief, just stillness. Like everything had just tilted slightly out of place. Behind him, Mako let out a low breath and lowered himself carefully to the floor, the injured paw finally giving in. Jack didn't look away from the paper. Didn't speak. The number didn't move. Didn't fade. It stayed there. Real, heavy. Waiting. And for the first time since stepping into the cabin, Jack didn't think about survival. He thought about something else. Why? Why him? Why this? Above them, The cabin sat silent in the fading light. Below, a lifetime had been hidden, and now it was his. Jack didn't smile, didn't sit down, didn't celebrate. He just stood there, the paper still in his hand, the number burned into his vision like something he'd stared at too long. $265 million. It didn't feel real, didn't fit the room, didn't fit him. Behind him, Mako shifted on the cold concrete, letting out a low breath as he eased his weight off the injured paw. The small sound grounded Jack more than anything else in the room. He lowered the paper slowly, set it back on the desk exactly where it had been. Not out of respect, out of instinct. Nothing here felt like it should be disturbed too quickly. Jack exhaled once, long and controlled, then turned his head, scanning the bunker again. Crates, shelves, everything numbered, everything documented. This wasn't luck. It wasn't random. It was built, piece by piece, over years, decades. His eyes drifted to the ledgers again. He picked up another one, flipping through it slower this time, not searching for the total but the pattern. Entries from the 70s, small amounts. Careful. Then the 80s, larger moves, calculated risks. Then the 90s. Expansion. Diversification. Jack's thumb paused on one page, a note written in tighter script than the rest. Hold position. Let it grow. He stared at it for a second, then flipped forward. Same pattern. Again. Again. No panic, no rushed decisions, just patience. Jack leaned back slightly, the weight of it settling in differently now. This wasn't a jackpot. It was a mission. Planned. Executed. Finished. And then handed off, his jaw tightened. Why me? He said again, quieter this time. Mako lifted his head slightly at the sound of his voice, watching him. Jack closed the ledger and set it down. The room felt smaller now, not physically, but in the way it held everything together. Every crate, every number, it all pointed back to one thing. Someone had chosen him, not randomly, not by accident, deliberately. Jack stepped away from the desk and moved back toward Mako, dropping to one knee beside him. Let me see it, he said. The dog didn't resist. Jack unwrapped the strip of cloth carefully, checking the cut again. Still shallow. Still clean. But the edges had started to stiffen. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a small field kit, half-used, worn from years of carrying it. He cleaned the wound quickly, precise, efficient. Mako stayed still the entire time. Didn't flinch, didn't pull away, just watched him. You're not done yet, Jack muttered. He rewrapped the paw, tighter this time, then pressed his hand briefly against the dog's neck. Mako leaned into it. Just once, then pulled back. Jack stood again. The bunker hummed with silence. Not empty, not dead, just finished. His eyes moved back to the stairs. Up there, the world still didn't know, but it would. Things like this didn't stay hidden forever. Not once someone else started asking questions. Not once the wrong people realized what this place was. Jack turned back to the desk one more time. There was something else there, a smaller stack. Separate from the ledgers. He stepped forward, slower now, picked up the top sheet. Different handwriting. Same precision, but more personal. A name sat at the top. Not his. Not yet. But close enough that his chest tightened slightly. He didn't read it. Not all the way, not yet. Instead, he folded it once, carefully, slid it into his jacket. Mako watched him do it. Jack met his eyes. Later, he said. The dog blinked once. Jack turned toward the stairs. Let's move. He didn't rush the climb. Each step measured, each sound controlled. At the top, the cabin felt warmer, different, like the air itself had shifted. Jack stepped out of the opening and turned immediately, pulling the panel back into place. The mechanism slid smoothly, sealing the floor as if it had never been touched. The seam disappeared. Gone. Just wood again. Jack stood there a second longer, staring at it, then turned. The cabin stretched out around him. Quiet, still, but no longer empty. Mako moved to the door again, standing in the same position as before. Guarding. Jack crossed the room and opened it slightly. Cold air rushed in. The forest beyond sat still under the fading light. Nothing moved. But something had changed. He could feel it now. Not inside the cabin. Outside. Pressure. Like a shift in the pattern. Jack stepped onto the porch, eyes scanning the tree line, angles, distance, movement. Nothing obvious. But the silence was too clean. Behind him, Mako stepped out, placing himself just behind Jack's leg. Protecting. Despite the injury. Jack's gaze narrowed. Yeah, he said quietly. They always come back. The wind picked up again, cutting through the trees in long, low waves. Somewhere out there, someone would notice. Someone would come looking. And when they did, Jack wouldn't be caught off guard. Not again. He didn't sleep that night. Not really. The fire in the cabin burned low, just enough to keep the cold from settling in. Jack sat in a chair angled toward both the door and the window, the way he always did when a place didn't feel neutral yet. Mako lay near the door, not curled, not resting, watching. Every few minutes, the dog's ears would twitch toward the forest, then settle again. The injured paw stayed tucked close to his body, but it didn't slow his awareness. Jack's eyes moved in patterns. Door, window, corners, back again, over and over. Around midnight, the wind dropped completely. That was what woke him, not sound, the absence of it. Jack's hand tightened slightly on the knife resting across his lap. Mako's head lifted at the same time. Both of them held still, listening. Then a distant crunch. Not loud, but wrong. Jack's eyes shifted to the window. Tree line. Dark. Still. Another crunch. Closer. Not an animal. Too steady. Too spaced out. Footsteps. Jack stood slowly, silent as the air around him. He moved to the side of the window, not directly in front of it, just enough to get an angle without exposing himself. Mako was already on his feet. No sound, just presence. Jack leaned slightly. There, movement between the trees. Two shapes, no lights, trying to stay unseen. Jack's jaw tightened. They didn't waste time, he muttered. Mako let out a low, controlled growl. Jack reached down, resting a hand briefly on his neck. Hold. The figures moved closer, stepping into the edge of the clearing. Moonlight caught them just enough. Two men, heavy jackets. One carried something long, tool, maybe a pry bar. Not hikers, not lost. Looking for something. Jack stepped back from the window. His mind moved fast, but not rushed. Distance, angles, options. He glanced toward the floor, the hidden entrance, still sealed. Good, they didn't know. Not yet. Jack moved to the door, stopping just short of it. He didn't open it, didn't reveal himself. He waited. Let them make the first move. Outside, one of the men stepped onto the porch. The wood creaked faintly under his weight. The second stayed back, scanning the clearing, Jack's breathing stayed slow, controlled. Mako stood just behind him, body angled toward the door, muscles tight but silent. A hand touched the doorknob, paused, then turned. The door pushed inward slowly. Jack stepped sideways, out of the direct line. The man entered halfway, peering inside. "Hello?" he called, voice low but not cautious enough. No response. Jack didn't move, didn't speak. The second man stepped up behind him now, closer. "You sure this is the place?" he asked. "Yeah, matches the description." Description? Jack's eyes narrowed. They knew, or at least, they knew enough to come. The first man took another step inside. That was far enough. Jack moved. Fast. One step forward, one hand grabbing the man's jacket, pulling him off balance and driving him sideways into the wall. Not hard enough to injure, just enough to stop him cold. The second man froze on the porch. "What the don't?" Jack said. His voice was quiet, flat, but it carried. The first man didn't fight, didn't even try. His breath came fast, hands raised instinctively. "Easy, man, easy. Who sent you?" Jack asked. No anger, just direct. The second man shifted his weight outside, uncertain. "We're just..." Wrong answer. Jack didn't raise his voice. Didn't need to. Mako stepped forward then. Just one step. Low growl building in his chest. The injured paw didn't matter. The presence did. The second man's posture changed instantly. Hands visible now. "No trouble, all right? We heard about the place, that's all." Jack's grip didn't loosen. "From who?" The two men exchanged a glance. Too quick, too practiced. Jack saw it. "They always talk," the first one muttered under his breath. Jack's eyes sharpened. Talk. News. Word was out. He released the man slowly, stepping back just enough to create space, but not enough to give control. "Leave," he said. Neither of them argued, didn't push, didn't test it. They backed out of the cabin carefully, hands still visible, eyes flicking once toward Mako before stepping off the porch. Jack watched them cross the clearing, disappear into the trees. He didn't relax, didn't sit. He stepped outside, scanning the tree line again, tracking the direction they'd gone until even the smallest movement was gone. Only then did he step back inside. Close the door. Lock it this time. Mako stood beside him, silent. Jack looked down at him, then back toward the floor. "They're not the last," he said quietly. Mako didn't move, didn't need to. They both knew. This place, what was under it, wasn't hidden anymore, and the next ones who came wouldn't be this careful, or this easy to turn away. Morning didn't bring relief. It brought clarity. Jack stood on the porch as the first light cut across the tree line, turning frost into a thin shimmer over the ground. The tracks were still there. 2 sets, leading in, leading out, not trying to hide anymore. Not after seeing what was inside. Mako stood beside him, weight shifted off the injured paw, but still upright, still alert. His nose dipped toward the ground once, following the scent trail the men had left behind, then lifted again toward the forest. They weren't coming back. Not today. But they would tell someone. Jack stepped down from the porch and moved along the edge of the clearing, eyes scanning beyond the obvious. No new tracks, no fresh disturbances. Still, the pattern had changed. He felt it. Back inside, the cabin held a different kind of silence now. Not waiting. Preparing. Jack moved straight to the table and unfolded the paper he'd taken from the bunker. The one with the different handwriting. He smoothed it flat. Read it this time. Slow. every word deliberate. It wasn't long, but it said enough. Instructions, names, references to people who could be trusted, and more importantly, people who couldn't. A line stood out more than the rest. They will use your past against you. Jack's jaw tightened slightly. Of course they would. He folded the paper again, slower this time, and slipped it back into his jacket. Mako shifted behind him. A low rumble built in his chest, not directed at the door this time, at the table. Jack turned. The dog was staring at the phone. Jack followed his gaze. The screen lit up. Unknown number. He didn't answer immediately, just watched it ring, once, twice, 3 times. Then he picked it up. Yeah. A pause, then a voice. Familiar, too smooth. Jack, the man said. Been a while. Jack didn't respond. Didn't need to. The voice continued. We heard you made it to the property. Glad to know you're settling in. He glanced toward the window, eyes narrowing slightly. You sent those guys? Jack asked. A soft chuckle came through the line. Just checking on things. You know how it is. Family business. Family. Jack's grip tightened slightly on the phone. You don't have any business here, he said. Another pause, then the tone shifted. Less friendly, more precise. You're sitting on something you don't understand, the voice said. Something that requires management, structure, oversight. Jack leaned against the table, posture relaxed, but only on the surface. I understand enough, he replied. Do you? The man asked. Because from where we're standing, you're a homeless vet with a record, no assets, no network, and a documented history of instability. There it was. Clean, direct. Jack didn't blink, didn't react outwardly. They'll question your judgment, the voice continued. Your capacity. They'll ask how someone like you is supposed to manage something like that. Jack's eyes drifted to Mako. The dog stood still, watching him, waiting. You think I can't? Jack asked. I think, the voice said carefully, that you'll have a much easier time if you don't try. Silence stretched between them. Outside, the wind moved lightly through the trees again. Jack exhaled slowly, then spoke. You're not coming up here, he said. Not again. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, we don't need to, the voice replied. We'll see you in town soon enough. The line went dead. Jack lowered the phone, set it down. Didn't move for a moment. Then, his hand clenched, not shaking, just tight, controlled. Mako stepped closer, pressing lightly against his leg. Grounding. Jack rested his hand on the dog's head for a second, then pulled away. They're not going to stop, he said quietly. Mako didn't respond. Didn't need to. Jack moved toward the window again, looked out at the clearing, at the tree line, at the distance between where he stood and where everything else waited. They're going to come at it different, he murmured. Not here. His eyes narrowed slightly. In town. Legal. Clean. Quiet. Harder to fight. Jack turned away from the window, moved to the door, opened it. Cold air hit his face again. Mako followed, limping slightly but steady. Jack stepped out onto the porch and looked across the land. Wide, open, defensible. But that wasn't where this would be decided. Not this time. He glanced back once, toward the floor, toward what was hidden beneath it. Then forward again. All right, he said. Not loud, not dramatic, just certain. We do it their way. Mako stood beside him, ready, even hurt. Jack stepped down from the porch. The line had been drawn, and this time, he wasn't stepping back. The courthouse in Riverton didn't look like much. Brick, flat roof, a flag that snapped sharply in the cold wind. But Jack slowed before pulling in anyway. Habit. He didn't park in front. He chose a spot off to the side, angled for a clean exit, clear line of sight to the main doors. Engine off, but keys still in his pocket, not left behind. Mako stayed close when they stepped out. The limp was still there, less sharp now, but not gone. Inside, the air felt different, too bright, too still. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, flickering just enough to pull at something in the back of Jack's mind. For a split second, the sound stretched, too long, too sharp, then snapped back. He blinked once, focused. People moved through the hallway in low voices, shoes against tile, papers shifting. Normal. Jack kept walking. Mako stayed just behind his leg, not pulling, not wandering, watching everything. They reached the office door at the end of the hall. Mitchell and Rains. Estate law. Jack paused. One breath, then pushed it open. Inside, a woman in her 50s looked up from behind a desk. Sharp eyes. No wasted movement. "You must be Jack Callahan," she said. Not a question. Jack nodded once. "That's me." She glanced down briefly, then back up. "And this is Mako." Jack didn't ask how she knew. Didn't need to. She stepped around the desk, extending her hand. "Clara Mitchell," she said. "Your uncle's attorney." Jack shook it. Firm grip. No hesitation. "Come on," she added, turning toward a back office. "We don't have much time." Jack followed. Mako stayed close. The office door closed behind them. Clara didn't sit right away. She went to a cabinet, unlocked it, and pulled out a small black case, set it on the desk between them. Jack didn't touch it. He just watched. "You've had visitors," she said. Jack didn't react. "2 last night," he replied. She nodded once. "Then we're right on schedule." Jack's eyes narrowed slightly. "Schedule?" Clara opened the case. Inside, a small screen, old, portable, and a tape. Jack's chest tightened just slightly. Not fear. Recognition. "This was left with me," Clara said. "Strict instructions, not to be shown unless certain conditions were met." She looked at him directly. "They've been met." Jack didn't speak. Clara inserted the tape, pressed play. The screen flickered, static. Then, a man appeared, older, late 70s maybe, sitting in a room Jack recognized instantly. The bunker, same desk, same shelves behind him. The man looked straight into the camera. Steady, clear. "My name is Thomas Callahan," he said. Jack didn't move, didn't blink. "And if you're watching this," the man continued, "then my nephew has already found what I left behind." The room felt smaller, quieter. Jack's hands stayed still on his knees. The man in the video leaned back slightly. "I didn't build that place for myself," he said. "Not really. I built it because I knew what kind of world it was becoming." A pause. Then, "I watched you, Jack." Jack's jaw tightened. From a distance. After Afghanistan. After everything went sideways. The screen flickered once. The man didn't break. "I saw what they did to you," he continued. "How they wrote you off, how they called it instability when it was just survival." Clara didn't move, didn't interrupt. Jack didn't either. You never left anyone behind, the man said. Not over there. Not back here. A faint shift in his expression. Not quite a smile. I needed to know who would. Jack's breathing slowed. Deeper. Controlled. You'll be challenged, the man continued. They'll say you're not fit, that you can't handle it, that your past disqualifies you. His eyes hardened slightly. They're wrong. The room held still around those words. I left everything to you, he said, because you don't take shortcuts. You don't panic. You don't abandon people when things get hard. A pause. Then, and they will come for it. Jack's eyes flicked once toward Clara. She stayed focused on the screen. They always do, the man said quietly. Family, outsiders, it doesn't matter. They'll use whatever they can. Your record, your history, your mind. The screen crackled faintly. Don't let them. The words landed flat, solid, final. You're not broken, the man said. You're trained. There's a difference. Jack's grip tightened once, then released. If you're watching this, then they've already started, the man continued. Good. Let them. A slight lean forward, eyes sharper now, because I planned for that too. The tape flickered again, then went still. Black screen. Silence. Clara reached forward and turned it off. The room stayed quiet. Jack didn't move. Didn't speak. Not for a long second. Then, he leaned back slightly. Exhaled once. Slow. Measured. Mako shifted beside him, pressing lightly against his leg. Grounding. Jack rested his hand on the dog's head, not looking down, just feeling it. Clara finally spoke. They filed this morning, she said. Petition for asset guardianship. Mental fitness review. Jack nodded once. No surprise. They're going to push hard, she added. They think you'll fold. Jack's eyes moved back to the black screen, then to the case, then to her. They're wrong, he said. Not loud, not emotional, just certain. Clara studied him for a second, then nodded. Good, she said, because we're not backing down. Jack stood. Mako rose with him, the limp still there, but steady. Jack turned toward the door, paused, then looked back once at the screen, at the place where the man had been. He didn't say thank you, didn't need to. He understood. The door opened. The hallway noise returned. But something had changed. Not outside. Inside. The fight wasn't coming. It was already here. And this time, Jack wasn't walking into it blind. The courtroom felt tighter than the cabin. Not smaller. Just heavier. Air that didn't move. People who didn't either. At least not without purpose. Every shift of weight, every glance, every whisper meant something here. Jack stood at the back at first. Didn't rush to the front. Didn't claim space. He observed. Judge's bench. Elevated, controlled. Opposing table. 3 people. 2 men he recognized from the night before, cleaned up now. Suits instead of jackets. And 1 more. Older, sharper. The one who had called. Attorney. Mako stayed at Jack's side. Still. Quiet. But not invisible. People noticed him. They always did. Jack moved forward when Clara signaled. Took his seat. Didn't lean back. Didn't relax. Just sat, hands resting lightly on the table, eyes forward. The hearing started without ceremony. Papers shuffled. Names stated. Then, The voice from the phone spoke again, polished now, measured. Your Honor, my clients are concerned about Mr. Callahan's ability to responsibly manage a highly complex estate, given his documented history. Jack didn't react, didn't interrupt, but his jaw tightened once, including unstable housing, lack of employment continuity, and signs of post-traumatic stress that could impair judgment under pressure. There it was. Clean, professional, weaponized. Jack's eyes shifted slightly, not to the speaker, but to the judge. Watching, reading. The attorney continued. We are requesting temporary guardianship of the assets until proper evaluations can be completed. Temporary. Jack knew that word. It never stayed temporary. Clara stood. Calm. Controlled. Your Honor, the petition is based on assumption, not fact, she said, and we intend to demonstrate that clearly. The judge nodded once. Proceed. Clara didn't call Jack first. She reached into her case, pulled out something small. Black, old, the same tape. The room didn't change, but something in it shifted. We would like to submit recorded testimony from the estate owner, Clara said. The opposing attorney straightened slightly. Objection. Overruled, the judge said without hesitation. Play it. Clara set the device on the table. Pressed play. Static. Then, the same room Jack had stood in. The same desk. The same man. Thomas Callahan. This time, the silence in the courtroom wasn't empty. It was focused. My name is Thomas Callahan. The words carried, clear, unshaken. Jack didn't look at the screen. Not at first. He watched the people instead. The shift, the subtle tension, the way the opposing attorney's posture changed just slightly. The video continued. I have observed my family for many years. A pause. Then, and I have chosen carefully who I trust. Jack's eyes flicked once to the opposing table. The two men from the night before didn't move, but their eyes did. They will attempt to take control of what I leave behind, the man said. They will use legal means. They will question capability. The courtroom held still. They will be wrong. Clara didn't move, didn't interrupt. The video ran its course, every word landing exactly where it needed to. When it ended, no one spoke for a second. Then, the judge leaned forward slightly, eyes sharp now, focused. She looked at the opposing attorney. Do you have anything that contradicts this? She asked. He hesitated. Just for a fraction, then recovered. Your Honor, with respect, this does not negate the present concerns regarding Mr. Callahan's. Answer the question, she said. A beat. No, Your Honor. Silence again, but different now. The weight had shifted. The judge turned her attention to Jack. Mr. Callahan, she said, do you wish to speak? Jack stood. Not fast, not slow, just steady. He didn't move to the center, didn't perform. He stayed where he was. Yes, ma'am, he said. His voice didn't rise, didn't need to. I've lived out of my truck, he said. I've gone days without sleep. I've made decisions in places where hesitation got people hurt. He paused. Not for effect, just because that was the pace. I don't panic, he continued. I don't quit. And I don't hand off responsibility because it gets hard. His eyes didn't leave the judge. This was left to me, he said. Not because I'm perfect. A small shift in the room, but because I finish what I start. Silence followed. Clean. Unbroken. The judge studied him, then leaned back. "The court has reviewed the evidence," she said. The words came measured, precise. "There is no basis for temporary guardianship." The opposing attorney opened his mouth. "Denied," she said. "Firm. Final. This matter is closed." The sound of the gavel didn't echo, but it didn't need to. Jack didn't move right away. Didn't react. He just stood there for a second longer, then sat. Mako pressed lightly against his leg. The tension in his body released. Just enough. Outside, the wind had picked up again. Snow started to fall. Light at first, then heavier. By the time Jack stepped out of the courthouse, the ground was already turning white. The world felt quieter. Not empty. Just settled. He walked down the steps slowly. Mako beside him. Limp still there, but steady. Jack paused at the bottom, looked out across the street, then back at the building behind him. It was over. Not everything, but enough. He turned toward the truck. Didn't rush. Didn't look back again. The road waited. The cabin waited. And for the first time in a long while, Jack didn't scan every angle. Didn't track every movement. He just opened the door, got in, and drove. Mako rested his head against the seat this time, not watching the road, not guarding. Just there. The mountains rose ahead, silent, unchanged, waiting. And this time, Jack wasn't arriving as someone passing through. He was coming home. And maybe that's what this story was really about. Not the money, not the fight, not even the cabin hidden deep in the mountains. But the moment a man who had nothing left finally had something worth standing his ground for. If you made it this far, I want to ask you something simple. Drop a 1 in the comments if you believe Jack did the right thing by holding his ground. Or drop a 0 if you think he should have walked away and avoided the fight. No long answers, just one number. And if this story stayed with you, hit subscribe. Because there are more stories like this, about people who were counted out, and the moment everything turned. I'll see you in the next one.